Hi, Michael. Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series podcast. Thank you very much for taking part. And look, on that note, I'm just going to hand it straight over to you to introduce yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Ed. Pleasure to be here. What do I do? That's a really hard question to ask and answer, I suppose. So I come from a banking business background. I've been in wealth management, asset management for the best part of 20 years now. Left Ireland 2010, 2011, just after the crash. Things were quite tough. To work in the financial sector in Ireland at that stage, you would, even my family didn't like me, I was the cause of all the problems. So I left, spent some time in the UK. Then I spent some time in the States, spent in Africa, some time in Russia, Eastern Europe, UAE. And I suppose maybe around 2014, then I started my own company, Woodbrook Group, where we were one of the first in Europe to get a MiFID license. And then we went on to have a number of MiFID licenses headquartered in Cyprus, and then expanded into other areas, into the IT sector, and then into corporate services. Took on a private equity group, I suppose 2017. And then we listed in the US, and I exited then just before COVID came. And then we had that relaxing time during COVID, and I kind of just had a little think about where I was going to go with myself, maybe. And then I had a company sitting there called Vantage Portfolio Services, where we're doing some consultancy work. And that's really what I've been concentrating really on there. So I do a lot of consultancy work with governments in Eastern Europe, one in Latin America. And then we also deal with some highlight individuals. And we were just about to launch a property fund in Ireland for social housing and affordable. And that's really one of the next ventures that we'll be looking at for 2023.
All right, fantastic. So obviously you mentioned property there as one area. What other areas do you help with the consultancy work?
We do a lot of work of implementations for types of blockchain technologies for governments and for individuals, where you have there's like a detachment at the moment. So we have this fantastic fintech environment, which is growing quite strongly. And then you have the government side of things and institutions where they're maybe a little bit slower to implement it. And yourself, you need to bring in a tax law, you need to bring in legislation around it. And that's really where governments have been struggling at the moment to see exactly, under which department should it sit, and then how do they roll that out. So we've done a lot of work with that at the moment. And another exciting example of what we're doing is we started consulting for a group of investors who wanted to bring a blockchain game. So we've been looking at that a little bit as well, which is also very exciting. I think if it frightens you, it's always good, I think, It takes your comfort zone. But I suppose, look, to put the legislation around it for government stuff is one of the easier aspects, because you're really going to be piggybacking on what's happening in other countries. So Switzerland have a good regime, followed by Liechtenstein. Germany is following suit quite fast. France, UK is doing excellent work. So you have a good indication what way the European Union will roll it out. So if you have companies in Eastern Europe that are not members of the EU yet, and they're looking to join, they want to bring in implementations, and they're trying to bring people on board quickly then to catch up and stuff. You have a good advantage from an aspect of showing them, okay, well, look, this is what everyone else is doing. That's how you should do it. I wouldn't give it to the telecommunications ministry for argument's sake. We should be looking at somewhere over in the banking sector. But it just depends on what their existing laws would have been and how they would have managed and stuff. So I spent a lot of time, as I said, in Eastern Europe. So it gives me a good indication. They tend to do things quite differently than they do in Western Europe, and from a lot of aspects, where it can be hard for us to grasp, I suppose, actually, why would they do that? But when you look at how they base, especially after coming out of the Soviet era and so forth, they have a different mechanism of getting there. So it's just to really understand that. And then the rest, once they're willing to work with you and all the rest and listen to the advice that you're giving them, and we'll bring in large law firms and so forth as well to back up the theories and put in the laws for it. It can work quite well then.
Excellent. Interesting to get the cross-cultural differences
Yeah,
and learn how that works.
yeah.
And obviously, there's a lot of international work there. What was the impact of COVID on the business?
Yeah, I suppose COVID really, there's no way to make it sound any better. COVID really killed the business to a large extent. Excuse me. But I suppose on a personal level, I found it a really good restart for myself. It gave me time to think about exactly what I want to do. I do want to live my life sitting on an airplane, trying to get to 2 countries a day. So yeah, it was tough for business. Business is still recovering, and then we have the impacts of the Ukraine and Russia situation at the moment, which doesn't help the scenario either. But in general, I'm quite positive. The last 6 months of 2022 ended very well. Even though I had COVID 4 times over the last couple of years, but it's the year ended quite well, and 2023 looks very promising as well. What's happening at us? So look, I think no matter who you're going to sit and talk to, I think over history and time, there's always been situations for whatever reason, but I think that's what defines somebody who has an entrepreneurial spirit, or whatever way you want to word it. They just get up and they deal with what's happening. It's okay, well, you got to do it again, or you start again. That's just the way it is, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And
Yeah.
and aside from perhaps getting COVID less often, what are the aspirations for the next 5 years for the business?
I'm not really sure what the aspirations will be for the next 5 years. I always said at 55, I'd like to hang my boots up. And for some reason, maybe it's because of getting COVID so many times and looking at what's happening with the Ukraine and the Russian situation and food crisis and all the rest, I have a real awe to try and get into farming to a certain degree. So I would like maybe to buy some land over the next number of years and maybe focus in that area. Maybe copy a Jeremy Clarkson a little bit and see if I can also produce a beer. How bad could it be? Being an Irish guy, you can't go really wrong. But from a business perspective of what I do today, I really look, I can grow this as large as I really want to grow it. And I truly believe that. I suppose after exiting the last business and having such a large footprint, I have a little worry about, do I really want to expand so much where I'm taking on so many people again? Because that brings its own challenges. And I suppose, even though we're sitting here talking on an interview over Zoom at the moment, I do worry about social media for the future, especially for younger generations, as I believe that no matter what they say or do, it's going to be there forever and ever, held against them. But we can all change our views, or we all say something stupid at the spur of a moment. So I'm worried the impact that will have, and then I would have to take on a lot of younger people who are just so much more advanced than I am in this area. And then there's no point in I always said there's no point in having an accountant and paying for them if you don't listen to the advice they give you. So if I extend the business out and I take on a lot of younger people, which really I should do, I would be worried then if they're telling me to do something and I'm not sure the impact that will have. So there's a lot of areas that I need to consider and think about as we move forward. But yeah, look, to answer your question short, the next 5 years are extremely promising in this sector where I'm in, especially advising governments and large institutions on cross-cultural differences and blockchain technology and so forth. And I think the need is only going to get more and more, especially when you have the big four that are out there at the moment who are getting into this area a little bit more, and they're splitting up their audit business from their consulting firm for regulatory perspectives. You will find there will be a lot of niche markets like this. So yeah, I'm very positive about it.
Excellent. And what are the challenges to overcome for the industry?
Which sector of the industry?
For the sector in terms of the blockchain and the governments, for example.
I think the blockchain is a really interesting area at the moment. The whole fintech arm. Unfortunately, we tend to look at things negatively sometimes. So when I look at blockchain technology today and where it sits and where it's come from, and the areas it can fix and make things faster, more affordable for people, it's very interesting. Even the NFT sector, the non-fungible tokens, where you can wrap it around properties. So NFT every property, which would save a lot of time in legal and banking situations when you're selling a property, and also makes it very clear and open. You know, there's from liquidity to cross-border payments. There's a real fix that can be done with this. In saying that, you know, we have to go through the series where you have the FTX situations and you know platforms coming and going, and people say, oh, it's a hoax, it's a hoax. Well, it's not really a hoax, you know. There's been people doing money laundering and conning people since the age of time. You know, if you look at every major bank that's been out there at the moment, they've all gone through their ups and downs and so forth. And look, there will always be bad news come out with new technologies and so forth. But I think if we could focus on the areas that it can work on, if we focus on the people that are trying to do it right, and there's a lot of them out there, it's an exciting time. So I think one of the major things will be to make sure that we bring laws around crypto and blockchain technologies, make sure that it's run right. And even governments have flaws. They'll never get it right first time, you know. So it'll take time. They'll bring out a new set of laws, and it'll be like a pendulum. It'll be too much this way. We'll need to come back a little bit that way. They'll change it. People will find a way to get around it a little bit. You know, look, it'll take time, but you know, if we look at the way the world, how fast the world is moving today, you know, where crypto has come in the last 10 years has been phenomenal. Blockchain technology at the background of it. It's very exciting. So I think the major area from that aspect will be to make sure laws come into play, and then over the next number of years, make sure them laws are filtered and softened and hardened in certain areas, and to make sure that everyone can participate in it. I think that's going to be the key. From the government perspectives, dealing with governments and implementations, it's a tough time to be in government at the moment. Even when I look at the Irish scenario, you know, Ireland, I think, was one of the only countries in the EU that had a surplus. Fantastic returns on investments for themselves. GDP is way up. They have huge issues with their health system and so forth there. And even, you know, the government, the coalition that's there has another 2 years to run. They won't be put back into power again. It's a given. So governments never really get to stay in power more than their one term, and then they have to share. And if they're going to share with somebody else, it means that they have to make compromise on what they really want to do. And that's no different really anywhere around the world, I suppose. So to deal with a government can be difficult from that aspect, where you can bring in changes and you can advise on what they should be doing and trying to bring in the policies. And you can make huge headrow, and then the government will change, or a minister will leave, and it gets put back on a back burner, and then they come back to 2 years later, and that time the word has changed again. So that can be a bit challenging. But yeah, look, I suppose from where we sit as a consultancy firm, or myself, I suppose it's perfect. It's billable hours, you know, what can be wrong with it? It's perfect.
Good recurring business model.
Well, look, it's not too bad. It can be very frustrating, but you know.
Excellent. Yeah. Look, obviously you've got lots of experience, Michael. What's your biggest learning as a business owner?
Not to surround yourself with yes people. If you can have people around you that will argue with you, question you, and have a good demographic of the people that you employ, make sure you have a, you know, I'm not going to say that I believe that 50% of my workforce should be female and the other 50 should be male. I believe that no matter whether you're male or female or other, as we would have today, you know, if they can do the job, they can do the job. It's to respect them, listen to them, learn from them. If you're the most intelligent person in the room, you're really in the wrong room. That's how I really look at it. Every day is a learning day. And then I suppose apart from that, it's trying to manage cash flows and make sure that your aspirations and dreams can match what you have in your bank account is quite important. Make sure you don't grow too quick. And then I suppose, just make sure that the service you provide is exactly what you say you're going to do, and do to the very best of your ability you can. You can't really do much more than that.
Fantastic. You mentioned aspirations there. What inspires you at the moment?
I have 4 kids. I have 27, 26, 14, and a 7-year-old. And I suppose looking at the world today, it frightens me for what they have to do. And I don't want to say the word, it's an aggressive word we live in, but I suppose as a guy who's now 50 years of age, it's so different to when I was a young guy. I see my 7-year-old, and he's looking at people playing games on YouTube and saying, this is ridiculous. I just don't understand that. So I suppose it's my aspirations is to try and that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in the blockchain world and the gaming world as well, to a certain degree now, because I strongly believe that we can have a product, let's call it that way, where it can also do good for the world. Or if a child is going to spend so much time on the game, or no matter what console it is or how they do it, if there can be neuroscience or some science in the background to that, where it engages the child, when we can learn from it in the background and see what they're doing. Or, as I said earlier, if we can buy land and we can grow crops without destroying the environment and help feed people, even if you're not making much money out of this, so if we're just breaking even, but if we can do that, and we can also learn from it to see how can we do things a bit better. I think we lost ourselves since the let's call it the Celtic Tiger in my area in Ireland, where it was just new cars, bigger houses, multiple holidays, and were we really happy? Well, I don't know if we were truly happy with all that, to be quite honest. That I think we've lost a little bit of our self-awareness on where we should go. So I suppose my aspirations for the next number of years would be, I suppose, just to try and get back in touch with what I can really do to help somebody around me, especially my family and friends, and see if we can actually build a system where it's just going to be better for everybody at the end of the day.
Great. And look, as a final thing, Michael, is there any news or any sort of offer that you'd like to share with the audience?
I suppose watch this space. I am in some deep level talk at the moment with some very exciting young people who scare me a lot, who are building out a new game, which will be a blockchain game, which will run on a DAO system, where there will be some science in the background of it. So as engaging as it will be to the audience that will play it, there will be information for them to receive at the background of it, where we're hoping, so for, why would you pick this particular color? And then just give them some information for their own career path or what they like to do in life and so forth. So it's to try and put something behind it. And I suppose the more I've delved into that and speaking with some very talented people, I look at them in awe, and I think, they're in their early 20s. I'm saying, this is phenomenal. I'm 50. I still don't know what I want to do with my life. And these guys are creating something so special. That has, I think that's what I would say to people to keep an eye out for. That'll be very exciting. Yeah.
Fantastic. Plus the farm and the beer in the future as well.
Well, the beer is a very important one. Yeah, I see if I can get a beer that'll help you lose weight. Maybe that could be something that we could work on.
That's a popular one, yeah.
Oh, that'll be a good one, yeah.
Lovely to speak to you. Thanks very much for taking part.
You too, Ed. Listen, thank you very much, and I hope 2023 is fantastic for you.
Likewise.